Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the Room.
This is Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room. Join film composer Anthony Marinelli, who programmed synthesizers for 7 songs on Thriller, and A&R veteran film producer Stephen Ray, who assisted Quincy Jones and was in the studio every day with Quincy and Michael.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room.
I'm Anthony Marinelli with my longtime close friend and co-host, Stephen Ray, bringing you the real stories directly from the talented people in the room with us during the making of Thriller, the greatest selling album of all time.
When I first met Quincy and Michael was David Foster at a certain point in the mid 70s there. David Foster started, his career was kind of taken off in a big way as a writer and producer. And when he was writing songs, he started, the artist would usually ask him to play, especially on his songs. And he would usually do synth overdubs. And he started bringing me along with him to do, to program for him. And that was the case with the Off the Wall album. David did a couple songs, had co-written a couple songs on Off the Wall. And we were doing synths on them. And he brought me along. It was a really cool studio, Alan Zent's studio. And that was the first time I met Bruce Swedien, first time I met Quincy, first time I met Michael. My dad had done a lot of stuff with Quincy, both, a lot of his film work, and I think on a couple of his older records and stuff. So, we definitely knew who Quincy was. And, I was thrilled to be part of that Off the Wall album. It was really fun.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, because I knew that your wonderful, amazing father had worked with Quincy, and I didn't know if he brought you along as a kid to some of those sessions, or I wasn't sure. Yeah. That's great.
He brought me along to a lot of sessions. I don't think ever to a Quincy session, though. Right. So that was my first time meeting him.
How did that segue into Thriller?
That went really well. Those sessions went well, and Quincy started hiring me on my own, without David Foster, to either program or sometimes play, just to do some synth work on his productions. And Thriller was, Thriller was just a little while later, and he was calling me in to work on that, on various tunes. It wasn't just The Girl Is Mine. By the way, I have to mention my good friend Amin Batia, who did not get album credit, does that gliss, that really cool sound at the beginning of The Girl Is Mine. That's Amin's sound. That was a brilliant programming on a Jupiter 8. Done.
Oh, great. See, that's great to hear.
And he never got credit, so I always love to take the opportunity to give it to him.
Good old label copy mistakes.
Yeah. Back
in the 80s,
Sure.
But how did it feel for you and David, to be asked? I remember, sitting next to Quincy, and he was putting out the word to ask you to come up with something original, something different for the album. That must have felt great. How did that feel?
It was always great working with Quincy, because it was always up and positive. I would do a lot of sessions where when they would call me in, again, Anthony, this, you've done tons of this kind of work, and a certain day, or maybe they've got 3 hours blocked, or maybe 6 hours blocked. And it's like to do the synthesizers, either on the whole album sometimes, or just on specific songs. And there's a lot of pressure to get something done, to deliver. With Quincy, it seemed the vibe was always real good and real kind of a very positive attitude. And, I would notice that half the time I'd be replacing someone else's stuff. And half the time I think people would be replacing my stuff. You know what I mean? I wound up.
Well, they couldn't keep it because there weren't enough tracks back then. There was a big decision, and that's a whole different way of going about things, right?
No, absolutely. Right. And that speaks to that too, at that time where you had to make those decisions right then. It wasn't like it wasn't endless tracks. So they would listen to what we got up, and you know what I mean? They'd listen to what they had. Sometimes Quincy would even play me what they had, what someone else had done. And, they would make a decision. Yep. If you were bettering it or whatever, you kind of, it was kind of a king of the hill kind of thing. But yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I wound up also, I was on a few other tracks on Thriller, and a few that I did.
Which ones?
I definitely did was on P.Y.T.
Yep.
What else? Of course, Human Nature and The Girl Is Mine. I'm trying to think. I don't remember. Maybe that was it.
Join us for the next episode of Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room, with your hosts Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray. Watch our extended interviews on youtube.com/@StoriesInTheRoom. Audio-only interviews are available on all podcast networks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok @StoriesInTheRoom. For the latest news and links, visit the website, StoriesInTheRoom.com. This podcast is produced by Christian D. Bruun and David Wolf, recorded by Audivita Studios. Additional recording by Ben Rackless. Edited by Jay Spang and Sean Hedinger. Music by Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album.